Trying to understand the eminence of real-world assets and the DeFi world? Then you are welcome to Link to the Chain, a podcast brought to you by Vsauce. It is designed to help you understand the happenings of decentralized finance along with real-world assets. I am your host, Nikki from Vsauce. I will be inviting experts from the Web3 industry to share with you their experiences and ideologies on RWAs and DeFi. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Vsauce podcast, Link to the Chain. I have the pleasure today to be with the founder and CEO of Arcade.xyz, Gabe Frank. Welcome to the show, Gabe. I always love to open up the beginning portion to, obviously let you talk about Arcade.xyz and what you do for them and why it became to be.
Sure. Hey, Nikki. Nice to be chatting with you. Arcade.xyz is a peer-to-peer marketplace for loans backed by NFTs, and it's usually the high-value NFTs. So our average loan size is about 45,000, and we've done about 125 million of loan volume on our application. So the application is just deployed on ETH mainnet. And yeah, that's kind of where we are today. My background before getting into crypto professionally in 2017 is actually in pawn shops, pawn lending. So I used to work with my dad in a family business that made loans against diamonds and watches and handbags and electronics and kind of anything under the sun. And then I got into crypto in 2017 and worked at a couple of custodians in the space on institutional sales team and was selling custody and loans there as well. So in the custodian, they used to take in deposits of Bitcoin and Ethereum and then lend out to market makers. And I was doing lending there also. And then in 2020, it was kind of DeFi summer and kind of when NFTs took off, started buying artworks that I thought were really cool and like super rare and known origin, and figured that it looked a lot like what might be a pawn shop and that these assets would need liquidity at some point. And so that's what kind of got us here.
Yeah, 2020 were the good days, huh? I definitely miss those, and I know we'll be back on it, but it's a cool fun fact that you mentioned you were working with your dad as a pawnbroker. I feel like that experience had to have some shape to your mindset towards collateralization and with digital and physical assets. Would you agree? And how did it shape your mindset towards RWAs?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, lending is sort of in my blood. I'm a third generation pawnbroker. So my grandpa started, a pawn shop in 1947 in El Paso. So it kind of runs deep. Collateralized loans run deep in my blood, I guess. And And yeah, so when we got into, making loans against NFTs and figuring out what NFTs could be, it looked a lot like digital collectibles, almost like luxury goods with the high value stuff. And so my background with pawn lending and lending against Rolexes and checking the authenticity and kind of just knowing that collateral market um, has got me really excited about what's coming with RWA. So we've done, loans against Rolexes and Patek Philippe's and Richard Milles that are it's an NFT, but legally backed by a physical asset sitting in a custodian. So yeah, I think that definitely did shape kind of the direction we're heading now.
Yeah, now that you mention tokenizing pretty much high-end luxury watches or timepieces, we did see the recent news about Arcade.xyz tokenizing a Patek Philippe, and it's gained a lot of attention, and it's kind of why we wanted to reach out to you. So, can you tell us more about the project and the topic, and are there any other assets in that space that you would see also delivering just as much, I guess, ROI as a Patek Philippe?
Yeah, I think the TAM for the type of stuff that we'll start to see is pretty massive. Right now, how it works is we work with a company called 4K.com, who is the authenticator and the custodian of the physical assets. So they store the physical asset, and then they mint an NFT that represents ownership of that asset. And that NFT is what's used as collateral for loans on Arcade. So if Arcade is like this, pretty much a global pawn shop with global liquidity, where you can plug in these RWA assets to get loans, it starts to look, you know, more like a global pawn shop, on-chain free port, what have you. It's kind of opening up global liquidity to these assets that otherwise you maybe can take it to a pawn shop or maybe can't even get liquidity on some of the more esoteric stuff. So yeah, we look at the Arcade platform as this permissionless DeFi protocol, and bringing real world assets on chain to tap into that liquidity is super interesting. And I think we, you know, we're leaning into that pretty hard.
Can you tell us more about the collab between Arcade and 4K protocol?
Yeah, so they're, you know, they're also a venture-backed company building a protocol specifically for real-world assets to get more assets on chain. Um, and we know their team, and it was pretty simple, just, you know, turning on support for those NFTs, the 4K collection. And then each NFT represents a watch, so they can simply list their watches on the Arcade app, and a lender with a MetaMask or a Web3 wallet can make a bid or lend against the watch instantly. So it's peer to peer in that sense.
It's actually really cool though, and I think it's gonna become more and more useful in today's society, like obviously real estate, cars, etc. There are other several projects using RWAs as collateral in the market. However, in your opinion, what's the difference between Arcade and other branches or applications? And another one that comes to mind that might be somewhat similar is Aura blockchain. I'm sure you've heard of them. Yes, no, maybe.
Yeah, I think I have.
And so their focus is also working with like obviously high end luxury goods. And on their website, they claim to be, you know, the first blockchain solution made by luxury brands for luxury brands. So I'm just wondering
Oh,
how do you
yeah.
differentiate Aura blockchain from what you guys at Arcade.xyz are doing? If you guys are both kind of working with luxury brands, I just want to know like your opinion on that.
Yeah, I do know the Aura thing. I looked into that. It looks like that's something like a consortium with LVMH, so a pretty big one. This looks like their own blockchain, like a permissioned blockchain. So the difference between this and Arcade is that Arcade is true DeFi, decentralized finance, and that it's community owned and governed. Not yet, but we're releasing governance next month, so the protocol will be completely community owned. So in that way, Arcade is just an application built on top of Ethereum, and this Aura looks like a blockchain to work more with Web2 firms. But I do see kind of these two things sort of merging a bit. But yeah, that would be the difference.
And are there also some interesting but different apps that are kind of floating around your, you know, industry vicinity with Arcade besides Aura?
There's a lot of different people working on tokenization. So similar to 4K.com, like being the authenticator and custodian, there's several projects working on that piece. Um, in terms of other blockchains, we see most activity happening on ETH mainnet. Like that's where the high value settlements are happening with the punks and the big art loans. I don't think that will change, but I could see a world where there is sort of like an L2 chain that's an Ethereum chain that captures a lot of this tokenized stuff, but it has to be done right. So yeah, I think the space is super fresh right now, and I think it's a big TAM if somebody can figure it out.
Yeah, that's the goal, huh? And let's see, apart from tokenizing Patek Philippe's, are there any other interesting projects involving tokenizing RWAs? I did see on your website that you guys also work with, you know, gaming collectibles, PFP collections. Like obviously, the most known one has got to be the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and fine art and generative NFT art. So, can you dive more into what those other aspects are that can actually bring value to Arcade.xyz?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I think gaming on the blockchain has been a lot of hype the last couple of years, but nothing's really taken off yet. There's a lot of money that's been poured into space and a lot of projects working on it. So I'm excited to see that develop. It doesn't seem like anything's there today. I'd say the gaming assets that we do see are like the Yuga gaming assets, where they actually need to use the NFT to play the game. And so we have an integration with Delegate Cash that allows borrowers to utilize the NFT while it's part of a loan in the game. So that's kind of the gaming part. The generative art, we see a lot of Squiggle, Fidenzas, Tyler Hobbs, a lot of the high value stuff that's been around for a few years. The generative art seems to have more staying power than a lot of the PFPs right now. I think on the PFP side, like you said, Bored Apes are the most popular, but lenders love lending against crypto punks because punks have been around a little bit longer. They're more like a Veblen good, which is just kind of a collectible good that gets more valuable and um, more in demand as the price goes up. And then on the art side, artists like Xcopy, Fuocious, Beeple, some of the high-end artwork that has gone through Christie's and Sotheby's. So we kind of hit across all these different NFT verticals, and and yeah, most of our volume is still on Punk, but now we're starting to actually do more volume against Art, Gen Art, and RWA.
Yeah, especially in the RWA market, do you think the market is converging or is it going to be more diverse in the future? And what are the key factors that support your opinion on this?
So I think these early loans, these watch loans, are in part conceptual. They're real borrowers, real lenders, real counterparties, real liquidity. But the way we've gone to market with this is sort of doesn't scale like we needed to. So figuring out a way to scale, getting more assets on chain and tapping into liquidity, that's kind of our goal. We do have a lot of inbounds right now of people wanting to tokenize certain collectibles. They have watches. We have one big loan that's coming that I'm really excited for. I don't know if I want to share about it yet. But yeah, it's going to be over $1 million loan on some in real life collectibles, and I think this is just the beginning, but in part it's mostly conceptual, and now we're trying to figure out how to scale this thing.
Oh, that's exciting. And obviously, in the RWA field, people are going to want to protect their assets, especially high value, luxury, etc. So, regarding security and credibility, since they are crucial for success of tokenizing, how does Arcade.xyz ensure the security of its platform?
Yeah, so our platform is all governed by smart contracts, Ethereum code that we built, and so the loans themselves are escrowed and settled via the smart contracts, via the code. The authentication of the real world assets is done by 4K.com in this part. So they authenticate the watch, make sure it's real, make sure it's legit, and then they store the watch. So they're the custodian and the authenticator. Um, and um, and yeah, and so they're I, they can escrow anything, right? That's real world, and I think it makes sense to start with the luxury goods like the watches and some of the more esoteric collectibles, not so much the real estate, the paper, like the paper debt and the not so much getting that stuff on chain because that's more like legal and compliance, and I think that's a little bit further down the road. But the luxury goods stuff is super interesting because 4K.com actually takes custody of the piece, and so you have kind of this new model of almost a global pawn shop. Yeah.
And with 4K, just out of curiosity, where do you know, are they like centrally located somewhere where they keep all these assets, or are they kind of like spread out globally? How does that work? Do you know?
I mean, they use I don't want to misspeak about their process. It's all laid out in their docs and stuff, and they're a completely separate business than us. Um, but they do have like a legitimate escrow warehouse that they use, and so I think at any time they can actually uh, send a video of the real world asset. So there's a lot of trust happening on 4K to custody and ensure that asset, and but that's what they're handling, and so that's their entire business.
Gotcha. And earlier, when you mentioned how you guys are trying to focus more on the assets like what came to my mind was, could you also tokenize like Pokemon cards, like rare cards, and like, back in the day, TY Beanie Babies were a thing. Since you were kind of moving away from, real estate and like all the legal type of assets, are those things that do you think could jump off, or is it too late for, nostalgic collectibles like Pokemon cards?
I think we actually have a Charizard on the app.
Gotcha. And I think with that, community is always a big thing, and user engagement play a vital role in projects. How does Arcade.xyz interact with its community and encourage user participation?
Yeah, we're just very open and very reachable and very reactive to user feedback. So we're kind of cranking on all cylinders right now on the protocol side, on the DApp side, on the engineering side, on the BD side, marketing. So it's kind of like this whole system that's working well right now. So we kind of just stay heads down and no days off.
Always grinding. Well, I know you did mention that you had like something big coming up with Arcade, but is there any other products or projects or information that you could provide about any development plans that you can share or strategic objectives in the RWA field?
Yeah, so we're releasing a version 3 of the protocol at the end of this month, which just has more loan features, gas optimizations, things like that. Um, the big thing that we're doing in the next 2 months is decentralizing the protocol, which means we'll have a governance mechanism and the protocol development and the governance will be controlled by the community, by the token holders. So that in itself is sort of like a project getting to decentralization. A lot of people probably ask like, what is decentralization? Why does that matter? Well, I think it matters. For long-term success. I think that's the only way these protocols accrue value in the long term is winning a lot of the network usage and becoming a category leader. So so yeah, we have a V3 protocol coming out. Getting more assets on chain is kind of our goal, and figuring out how to untap a lot of in real life liquidity.
Is there anything that you personally think that hasn't been tokenized yet but has a lot of potential?
I just think I think a lot of like diamonds, like high value stuff that is just idle sitting places. There's a lot. I think the world becomes more capital efficient with blockchain, that blockchains are really good at making things more liquid. DeFi is really good at making things permissionless and um, trustless. So the two together, I think, are really interesting, and it's not going to happen overnight, but things will start looking, I think, pretty differently in the next 3, 4 years.
And how do you think that is going to pretty much happen in terms of mass adoption? Do you feel like there are certain aspects that can help you reach out to more consumers and clients? Because whenever you talk about rare art or collectibles, antiques, it obviously brings up, the older generation. They're the ones who had it before us. And if they are kind of, either some of them may be too stuck in the old ways where they're like, I don't know anything about Web3, anything that has to do with blockchain scares me, etc. How do you kind of like get them to be on the bandwagon and let them know, like, hey, we can actually help you, make money with the collectibles that are just sitting around in your house? Like, how do you reach out to the older generation or folks who are kind of fearful of this new technology that exists?
Yeah, I mean, I think it happens slowly with proving out certain concepts, and a lot of the wallet side, private key side, um, managing funds all has to sort of get a lot better, and the blockchain has to be abstracted away. Um, so I don't know if it's a scenario where, this will pick up via retail, just like a consumer type thing. I think, we're looking at it more as getting inventories on chain where wholesalers or certain groups have a lot of assets, and um, might need liquidity or invoice factoring or things like that, more esoteric liquidity on certain goods that can't find anywhere else. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how we see it.
And one more question regarding your clients. Are you guys focusing more so just on the US market, or are you also working with clients globally at this time?
So we don't have any clients. We have just users of the protocol. So Arcade is just a protocol and a decentralized application. Um, but most of our audience is global. So we have a lot of like Asia presence. We have a lot of um, presence in like and with investors sort of all over also. So I'd say most of our users are split across. It's not really centered anywhere.
Perfect. That's kind of what we want in this industry, right? Decentralization. And cool. Well, I also like to leave some time at the end for you, Gabe, to either tell us anything exciting about the company or yourself that we haven't asked about or mentioned, and to please plug your socials. Like, where can people find out more about Arcade.xyz, 4K, yourself? Yeah, feel free to just plug in anything that you feel necessary.
Yeah, so our website, of course, is arcade.xyz. We have a Twitter that's very active and where we share kind of all our updates, big loans, and new feature updates, things like that. There you can find our Discord link also. So we have a Discord where there's tons of channels with users talking about loans, talking about NFTs, trying to get matched with the lender. We also have a 4K RWA channel if you have questions, how to tokenize an asset or what's that like. Yeah, I'd say that's the best place to enter, and we do have a lot of kind of cool things coming out this next month, so should be fun.
Sweet. Well, thank you for the chat, Gabe. It was really cool to get to know more about Arcade.xyz and diving into obviously the RWA world and kind of like the Wild West that we're in right now. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I wish you guys all the best at Arcade.xyz, and can't wait to see what that $1 million loan deal was about.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Nikki. Enjoyed the chat.
With this, we come to the end of the episode. To our audience, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed what we are discussing about the RWA and DeFi world, please don't forget to subscribe to Link to the Chain and share it with others. To catch all the latest from us, you can follow our Instagram and Twitter at Link to the Chain. Looking forward to sharing with you guys the next episode. Stay tuned.